Joining us now, Michael Reagan, political commentator and chair of the Reagan Legacy Foundation. And you can find him on Twitter. His address there is @ReaganWorld. Michael, thanks for joining us by telephone from California this morning. What do you make of the president's statement?
Well, you know, it's interesting. He picks and chooses what he wants to get involved in, and every issue he seems to get involved in is a race issue. And that's it. I mean, that's where it is. He doesn't talk about what's going on in Chicago. He doesn't talk about what's going on really in other parts of this country, which is a real problem. Instead, he finds a race issue in every single issue, and that's what's sad about this president of the United States. There's a lot of issues on the table in the world that we live in, jobs and everything else, but I think he wants his legacy to be that he's trying to do everything he can about race, but maybe he needs to do things about crime.
Michael, in your most recent column, you write, and I quote, "If you don't want to get shot dead by a cop, don't rob a convenience store, don't try to grab a cop's gun, and don't charge the cop after he orders you to stop." Obviously, that's in reference to the Ferguson case. We just had Bernie Carrick on talking about the case with Mr. Garner in New York, Eric Garner resisting arrest. How do you believe the two cases differ, or is there a basic component at work here that brought about these police actions?
Well, I think one of the differences in New York is that the chokehold is not something that, in fact, is one of the programs or one of the holds used by New York police. In fact, they asked you not to use the chokehold. That, indeed, is a problem for the police officer. The other issue is that you have somebody who was, yes, resisting arrest, but also told you, 11 times you couldn't breathe. So I think in a lot of ways it is a different issue. Resisting arrest, you resist arrest. But if you can't breathe, you're saying you can't breathe, and the police officer is using a chokehold, which is not against the law, but against policy in New York, then you have a lot of different issues than what you had going on in Ferguson. The other issue is we haven't heard what was testified before the grand jury in New York. We know what the testimony was, in fact, in Ferguson, Missouri. And as I said in my op-ed piece, the fact is that I think that the DA there was brilliant, because when he saw the evidence where it was going, he knew he couldn't get many of those who would testify to a courtroom where they would be seen, their names would be put out there by the community, and he feared for their safety and their lives, and he could get them behind closed doors in a secretive grand jury where they could testify honestly and truthfully, as many of the blacks did.
Michael, we've got about a minute 15 left. I want to get your comment on something that Peter King had to say. Congressman Peter King, let's take a listen, then we'll get your reaction on the backside.
I feel strongly the police officer should not have been indicted. I've been following this case from the start. You had a 350-pound person who was resisting arrest. The police were trying to bring him down as quickly as possible. If he had not had asthma and a heart condition and was so obese that almost definitely he would not have died from this. The police had no reason to know that he was in serious condition.
Simple question, 30 seconds. Do you agree with what Peter King is saying there?
Well, again, Peter King is from New York. He's congressman from New York, probably a lot more familiar with it. And like I was saying before, the fact is saying he couldn't breathe 11 times using a chokehold that is outlawed within the police department causes a problem for the policeman. But again, I have not heard the testimony before the grand jury as we've heard the testimony before the grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri. So to sit there again and make this a race issue, this isn't a race issue. If it was a white guy with an asthma problem or a Spanish guy with an asthma problem, the same person would have died.
Fair enough. Michael Reagan, stay with us. You do too. We're coming right back.